Clean Energy Alliance.
How long you been doing this?
Yeah, sorry. Okay, we're ready to call to order the regular meeting of the Clean Energy Alliance for March 28th, 2024. Will Kaylin, you please call the roll?
Board Member Garcia,
Here.
Board Member Becker,
Here.
Member Musgrove,
Here.
Alternate Board Member Joyce,
Present.
Melendez.
Here.
Chair Druker.
Here.
Noting Board Member Bhat Patel is absent.
Nice. Great. Thank you very much. Christian, will you lead us in the pledge today?
Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Are there any board comments or announcements? Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say thank you to our CEO, Greg Wade, for participating in a podcast recently for the Vista Chamber of Commerce. We continue to hear from folks that they're, not sure about CEA. They don't quite understand what rollout is happening. And we were able to kind of sit down and explain those things. And it was great to have the hospitality of Rachel with the chamber. And I thought Greg did really, really well. I think he made us look really good. So thank you for that. And just wanted to say that if you have anyone has any ideas of ways that we can continue to market our programs and make the public more aware of the transition that we're going through, I think it's great the more we can share that with the public. Thanks.
We do not have any non-agenda public comment.
And do you want to explain for those people on Zoom how they would do that, Kaylin?
Yes, thank you. Members of the public can address the board on items on the agenda at the time the item is being addressed or during public comment for topics that are not listed on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. In conformance with the Brown Act, no board action can occur on items presented during public comment. If you desire to speak during public comment, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the board secretary. When you are called to speak, please come forward to the podium and state your name. To address the board regarding an item on the agenda, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the board secretary before the board chair announces the item.
Thank you. The next is consent calendar, and we have one item that the Clean Energy Alliance Treasurer's Report for January 2024. Does anybody have?
Excuse me, Chair. We do have approval of the minutes before we get to the consent
I
calendar.
thought I got that.
I'd move to approve, Chair.
Moved by Musgrove. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Will you please call the roll, Kaylin?
Board Member Garcia,
Aye.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Musgrove,
Aye.
Alternate Board Member Joyce,
I'm going to abstain because I missed part of the meeting and I have not reviewed that part of the meeting on.
Vice Chair Melendez.
Aye.
Chair Druker.
Yes. Great. Now we go on to consent calendar, sorry. And that is the Clean Energy Alliance Treasurer's Report for January 2024. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or would you like to approve it?
I would move to approve.
Second.
Okay, very good. Kaylin, will you call the roll, please?
Board Member Garcia,
Aye.
Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Musgrove.
Aye.
Alternate Board Member Joyce.
Aye.
Vice Chair Melendez.
Aye.
Chair Druker.
Yes. Okay, now we go on to CEO report. I guess that's you, Greg. You're up.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. This is the CEO report. Again, typically this is on the consent agenda, but due to the imminent launch of Oceanside and Vista, we've moved it up to give you an overview of how we're progressing with that activity. So I'm going to give you an overview of those community events that we both have participated in and will be participating in. And this is not an exhaustive list, just to assure people that we've had other engagement activities that go beyond this list. presentations to community groups, and enrollment statistics for Vista and Oceanside, as well as the overall enrollments for CEA. So we've been quite busy since the last board meeting. This again are some of the events that we've participated in, including the Sunset Market, which we will again be participating in this evening in Oceanside. We also recently were advised that we'd be participating in their farmers market, which will happen in April, and that's on the next slide. Some of the other events that we participated in, the Vista Farmers Market, we have that again on our upcoming schedule, Encinitas and North Coast Democratic Club, as well as the Green Valley Mobile Home Park in Vista. The Vista Realtors Group, Oak Tree Democratic Club, the Vista Senior Center. Supervisor Desmond recently had a town hall that we provided a presentation for, and the Oceanside Chamber event last week, which was very well attended. And then, as I mentioned, some of the other farmers markets and Vista Farmers Market, Oceanside, Sunset Market, as well as their farmers market. We are participating in the Earth Day event for Vista, and we're not limiting this activity to just Vista and Oceanside right now. We are doing some outreach efforts in other cities, including Encinitas, and as you can see here, Escondido for their street festival, and Carlsbad's Chamber of Commerce. But focusing most of our efforts, as I mentioned, with Vista and Oceanside to get the word out and answer questions for, as Vice Chair Melendez mentioned, the questions that are coming up. Moving on to the stats, as you can see, through the end of February, we've had very good success in terms of participation rates for both Vista and Oceanside, both of whom are experiencing less than a 1% opt-out at this point. We have seen preliminary statistics in this month where we are still sending out notices. There is a corresponding increase in opt-outs as well as opt-down and opt-ups. However, we're hovering right at about 2% opt-out for the overall participation or opt-out rather, both those jurisdictions. This just gives you an idea of the overall participation in our various three products, the 50% renewable, 75% carbon-free, and 100% renewable. As you can see there, we have most of our participants in the default product of Clean Impact Plus, and we still have a fairly strong opt-up as well as similar opt-down statistics for the overall service territory. I would like to point out that we were recently made aware of one Green Impact champion, Dr. Bronner's, that recently advised us they were opting their business up to 100%. And I just wanted to point that out, that Dr. Bronner and his company are very excited about being a champion for that product. So we expect to potentially have them come and be present at one of these the next meeting to speak on that. If there are any questions or comments about that first portion of the update.
I have a quick question, Greg. I really appreciate Dr. Bronner's being a good steward. They always have been. We're proud to have them in Vista. What does it mean to be a Green Impact champion?
Yeah, so that's a program we recently launched, and what it means is that you've opted your commercial, or not just commercial, but residential, you've opted up to 100% renewable. So our Green Impact product. And what we do for those customers is when you enroll in this program, we provide opportunity for our website to identify them as a Green Impact champion. And we provide advertising opportunity as well for them through local media. So it's just a program to encourage other businesses to opt up to 100% and to see if we can get more people to be a Green Impact champion.
Wow. So when any business opts up to 100% renewable option, then they have a free advertising opportunity.
That is correct.
Pretty cool. Thanks.
Of our opt-outs, how, and I apologize, I didn't get to see you in advance, and if you don't have it on top of mind, you can give it to us next time, but of the opt-outs, how much of those are businesses or big consumers? Do we have numbers on that?
And we do, but I would have to get back to you on that, and I can report back to the entire board. I don't have that, but we do have insight into that.
Okay, that would be just as our overall like output would be interesting to me to know, and maybe something that we could do more work on our end of reach out. Thanks.
Greg, in terms of the feedback that you're getting when you're out there and your team is out there, is there any major concept that you're getting in terms of dislike or like of CEA?
I think the majority of the feedback we're getting is positive, overall positive, that there's a choice. There's most people we speak to are happy with the ability to choose from 3 energy products. They're also happy about the environmental benefits. I would say that we do frequently get asked about the cost as it compares to SDG&E. We do get a lot of questions around net energy metering. However, a lot of the contacts we have in person, at least if I can be corrected if I'm wrong, they haven't made a full commitment to say, okay, well then I'm going to opt out or I'm going to stay or go. We do get customers coming up, at least the Vista Farmers Market, for example. We had some saying outright they're staying with SDG&E. And then we have received a number of comments simply that rates are too high. How can we get a handle on electricity rates? So sometimes we have some pretty lively discussions about time of use and when to not use energy if they can. But those are generally the comments that we get. I would say the majority, which is borne out by the statistics, are positive.
Thank you. Any other questions for Greg? Kaylin, are there any public comments on this?
We do not have any speakers.
Very good. So we go on now to staff reports. The first one is feed and tariff program. So Greg,
Thank
do you
you.
want to introduce?
Thank you, Chair Drucker and members of the board. I'm going to, before I introduce Dan Peckham to provide the presentation on this item, this is our feed and tariff program, or otherwise known as our FIT program, or local solar. So think solar plus, except for commercial, potentially large residential if we have applicants. And I'll turn it over to Dan for the presentation. Dan.
Thank you, everyone. I can advance the slides here. So board item 3 is requesting the board to consider approval of the feed and tariff FIT program, which we are calling the local solar program. As noted here in the bullets, we're recommending that the board adopt resolution 2402, which would approve this FIT program, as well as the corresponding materials, the schedule, application, and power purchase agreement. We are also recommending that the board authorize CEA staff to begin implementing this local solar program and execute FIT power purchase agreements with eligible projects in accordance with that schedule. So a little bit of background on this and a bit of a recap of the previous discussion the board has had on this item. The feed and tariff is an offering used by many CCAs to incentivize small scale local renewable energy projects. Standard offer in this context is referring to the fact that CEA will have a template power purchase agreement that any applicants must agree to in order to participate in the FIT, the signed actual agreement with CEA. This model allows CCAs in general to more easily enter into agreements with a number of smaller scale projects without having to negotiate power purchase agreements separately. FITs generally operate on a first come, first served basis, which would mean that once they have submitted a completed application, they are entered into the program queue, and then a power purchase agreement is signed once the project is construction ready and has achieved all of its milestones and prerequisites according to their application and the dates that said they would submit it by. And CCAs can also use feed-in tariff programs to incentivize specific goals or objectives through the parameters of the program. For example, offering financial or other incentives for projects that are offering workforce development, co-location of solar generation with storage, using brownfield sites, things like that. CA's board already instructed staff to begin developing a feed-in tariff program last year. And so this meeting is for coming back to the board for approval to implement the program along the lines of the parameters that had been previously approved by the board. So this slide has the program components. Sorry, got a bit of background noise. The program components are outlined here, and this is consistent with what was already approved in the previous board meeting. Just to quickly list them off, these would be projects that would need to be in CEA's service territory. Project size would be between 500 kilowatts and 1 megawatt. The base offer price is $85 per megawatt hour, with a bonus for projects that also include co-located battery storage of an additional $15 per megawatt hour. These would be 20-year power purchase agreements for new build projects, and all of the renewable energy certificates from these projects would be transferred to and owned by CE. There would also be a $500 application fee submitted to the PIP. And we also put the logo up here, but as Greg mentioned, this would be called the local solar. Finally, just briefly touching on next steps. So first, pending board approval today. After that, CEA staff would have a program webpage. It is ready to be released and includes instructions, all the materials, includes the documents that were attached with this board item. This would also involve marketing. This program would involve marketing both to local developers and also to owners of potential sites for these projects. And then finally, as applications come in, CEA staff, i.e. myself, would be processing applications as they're submitted. That is it for the slides, but I'm happy to.
Other questions for Dan? Go ahead, Christy.
Thank you so much for explaining that again. So you said the advertisement is on the website, and are you actually going to contact a few maybe people that you think might be interested in this, or how else would you get out the word for this?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. For a application to be submitted, it likely will require a site owner who has a site that is situated well for interconnection, as well as typically or probably a developer partner. The application process and the size of these projects is something that you need someone with some expertise for. So one part of that in terms of reaching out to local developers is begun building a list of such developers and contacting them to make sure that they're aware of the program.
Great.
Separately, for the site owner side of things, we're in the process of working with SDG&E's online mapping tools to understand where there is capacity, and are thinking that that would be a primary option to think about where there might be site owners who might be interested and actually have the capability of siting projects correctly.
Great, that sounds good. And so just to be clear, so the $500 application fee, that is strictly like your time to actually process this. So anyone seeing that knows that it's not really a fee, it's just your time to process that application.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I like the logo, looks really good. We have a good company, that Tripepi Smith, I assume, did that, so very good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have a
Go ahead,
few
Christian.
questions, if that's all right. So I'm not sure if you touched on it. Who are we targeting? Say, I know Greg and I spoke about this, but I want to know, who are we targeting on this? Is it commercials? Is it small? Is it HOAs? I mean, who's the audience here?
Yeah, so I'd say primarily the constraint on the targeting for a site perspective is just the size of the site and the interconnection capability. So I guess perhaps what you're getting at is the type of size that we're looking at here. This would be looking for a space of potentially 5 acres plus up to 10 acres in terms of how much space you would need to site a system of the size. So that could be a private landowner, it could be a CNI customer. Our expectation would be that probably it's larger site owners like CNI customers or a developer, land developer who has a significant portion.
So many people could potentially qualify, whether, like you said, private, commercial, whatever, right, HOAs. The other thing I want to know is, in terms of the infrastructure, so do the people who are applied, do they have to provide already infrastructure? Do they already have to have the infrastructure in place, or is this something that would, or is it dependent? I'm sure that's usually the answer, but what would the case be for the infrastructure?
So all of the projects going through this would be submitting an interconnection application through SDG&E to connect to the grid. In some cases, the extent of the added infrastructure to connect to the grid might be pretty minimal. And that's where talking about the mapping things, finding the locations where the capacity is there aren't huge infrastructure upgrades needed. Sorry, that it would be would allow for the interconnection application to go smoothly, and also the infrastructure upgrades needed to be pretty limited. In places where there's not capacity, that's where SDG&E might determine that structure upgrades needed are significant, and that could increase the need and the cost.
Perfect. That's it. Just when I want to communicate this to people, I want to make sure that we have some questions that I know will come to mind. Thank you so much.
Other questions? Are there any public comment, Caitlin?
We do not have any speakers on this item.
Very good. So this is an extremely important program that we have because what it does is increases the ability to have microgrids. And that's one of the major issues that renewable energy has at this point, is the capacity of the large grid to be able to support major projects around the state and outside the state. And if we are going to continue to provide clean energy, we're going to have to build the infrastructure within our own grid. And so therefore we have to find that capacity within our own grid, the grid of San Diego County, or West San Diego County, shall we say, to be able to provide that renewable energy. And so this is an extremely important piece of that puzzle at this point. So really appreciate, Dan, the presentation, and you're working on this project, and go forth and get us a couple megawatts, right?
Oh.
Great. Thank you. Next on our agenda is a regulatory update. What?
Could you
I'm
take?
sorry.
Thank you.
We do need to have a motion on this, so
Move to accept and approve.
I'll second.
very good. Galen, will you please call the roll on this?
Board Member Garcia,
Aye.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Musgrove,
Aye.
Alternate Board Member Joyce,
Aye.
Vice Chair Melendez, Chair Druker.
Yes. Okay, sorry about that. Next, we're up to regulatory update.
Thank you. Before we move on to item 4, which is a regulatory update, I did want to swing back to Director Joyce's question on the opt-outs. So this is again through February. Commercial industrial opt-outs for Oceanside are non-net energy metering are 0, 25 residential. In Vista, there are, again, non-net energy metering, 15 commercial industrial opt-outs, 472 residential, and 497 for both cities, or sorry, 497 total, so 512 for both cities. In the opt-outs for NEM customers, again, 0 for Oceanside, 8 residential, 18 for Vista, 187 residential, 18 was the commercial, and a total of 213 for both cities. So that's the 725 opt-outs total. So not a very high opt-out rate, for actually 0 for commercial industrial, whether you're net energy metering or not. That's the statistics through February. we'll provide an update at the next meeting.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So, Mr. CEO, I was wondering if we could identify, just to make sure that there's not some commercial properties out there that we want to, that have any questions or anything. I don't know if that's something that one of our staff members could do and just make sure that we contact them. We don't want them to opt out. It would be great to have them on our radar.
I appreciate that, Board Member Becker. And one thing I would say is that we have been reaching out to some of the larger restaurant groups by way of I believe it was the Economic Development Council. So we have reached out to 4 of the larger restaurant owners throughout our service territory to talk to them about this.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on, we now have item 4, which is our regulatory update. And we do have with us today Andrew Ball, who's with Keys and Fox and is going to provide that regulatory update. Andrew.
Good afternoon, Chair Drucker, Vice Chair Melendez, members of the board. My name is Andy Ball. I'm an associate with Keys and Fox. I'm not Tim Lindell, who couldn't be here today, but he sent me in his place. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to share yet another regulatory update with you all. I know our time here is limited this afternoon, so I want to focus on 2 key dockets, but there's a little bonus content as well, as there was a proposed decision that dropped yesterday that I'd like to briefly highlight. But first, I want to talk about this idea of provider of last resort. I'll refer to it from time to time as POLR, and it's a proceeding that has been going on for a few years now, and it recently resulted in an important proposed decision that has some implications for CCAs like CEA. Then I'll touch on resource adequacy just briefly at the end, and then a little bit of that bonus content where I'll touch on the proposed decision the Commission announced yesterday covering the implementation of fixed demand charges for the investor-owned utilities here in California. So let's start with provider of last resort. Provider of last resort is this concept that there needs to be sort of an LSE that's designated by the Commission to receive customers from another LSE in the case that one LSE ceases to operate or provide service. For now, we can think of these providers of last resort as the traditional investor-owned utilities. So in CEA's case, that would be San Diego Gas and Electric. Before I go into any more detail here, I want to note a couple of things. First, this is a long-standing commission run and orchestrated program, but the legislature did recently get involved, which prompted this latest rulemaking before the commission. And one of the key things that legislation did was direct the commission to consider implementing rules and guidelines and a structure by which LSEs other than the traditional IOUs can take over this provider of last resort role. That part of the legislation was not addressed by the proposed decision that came out earlier this month. Those are issues that are going to be tackled in phase 2 of this docket, phase 3, and so those are open questions and they're really important questions, but they're not covered by the proposed decision that came out a couple of weeks ago. So in this provider of last resort world, what we're really talking about is customer migration. And really the key issue and sort of the biggest issue here is how does the system adapt in the case of a mass involuntary customer migration from one LSE back to the provider of last resort? And the concern that sort of animates all this is that there could be cost shifts involved in such a migration. At least that's sort of the argument. And the idea there is that customers within the traditional IOU who remained there might end up footing the bill if there was such an involuntary migration from a load serving entity like a CCA. And so the question is here, how do we manage that cost shift? And the primary tool there is this idea or this concept called a financial security requirement. And in essence, this requires non-providers of last resort, so CCAs, to put forward a financial instrument that could then cover the cost of a potential involuntary migration of customers. The financial security requirement you get to that by adding up the cost of procurement that would be associated with those migrating customers plus administrative costs. And then you subtract out the revenue that the provider of last resort could collect based on those returning customers. So that's sort of in really broad strokes, how you get to the financial security requirement. And I wanted to just give you a really high level description of that because it comes into play in the proposed decision. These financial security requirements are revised twice a year, and load serving entities then have to put up that financial instrument I mentioned a moment ago. This is something that CEA is in compliance with, and is something that is a continuing obligation under this regime. So as I mentioned, there was a proposed decision in this docket filed a few weeks ago. Comments on that proposed decision are due next week with reply comments a few days later. And then the earliest that the commission can hear this proposed decision is in mid-April. So a couple of key points here from this provider of last resort proposed decision. The first is on the issue of the financial security requirement. So as I mentioned before, there's a calculation that gets to that FSR. But the commission acknowledged that in certain circumstances, that FSR calculation could result in a relatively low number or perhaps even zero. And the commission instituted a minimum FSR. And that minimum was $147,000. In the new proposed decision, the commission, or under the proposed decision, if it's adopted, the commission maintained that $147,000 minimum, but then said that if the administrative costs associated with an involuntary mass migration of customers exceeded $147,000, then that number, the administrative cost, would be the minimum. So it's a bit of a moving target, but the practical takeaway for CEA is that for the time being, the FSR is likely to remain at $147,000 because of the size of CEA's customer base. In other words, the administrative costs of a potential involuntary migration of CEA customers back to STG&E is lower than $147,000, and therefore the minimum remains at that $47,000. But it's worth highlighting this just because it does change the mechanics of how this FSR is reached, and it could result in higher FSR amounts down the line. The second point,
Andy,
yes.
this is Andy Stern. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware. There is a very complicated calculation proposed for how it's calculated, and that includes projections of energy costs and RA requirements and all those other things. Based upon the current calculation and our current projections, we estimate that our financial security requirement is a negative $1.6 million, and therefore we could be subject to $147,000. We would be subject to the $147,000 minimum. However, just to make sure the board's aware that those projections could change at some future date, and then it could reverse into something else. I know that there are some CCAs, particularly in the PG&E territory, where that FSR commitment is in the millions of dollars, but the current projection or current expectation is that CEAs will remain at 147,000.
Thank you, Andy. And I fully agree that there is some nuance here that I'm not diving into as far as how the calculation plays out. And there is the possibility that under the calculation, it results in a negative number, which is something that was dealt with by this proposed decision, and which is sort of what led to the alternative minimum FSR approach that the commission might adopt through the proposed decision. Happy to answer further questions on that, but I also want to make sure I can cover one of the other important point that came out of this proposed decision, which has to do with the financial reporting obligations for non-providers of last resort.
And if I could, just as a reminder that for CEA, that 147,000 is in the form of a letter of credit. At some time ago, you would actually put a cash deposit up with the PUC, and that's no longer how they wish to handle this. So it's with a letter of credit for CEA.
Thank you, Greg. So the second main takeaway from this provider of last resort decision is this idea of financial reporting obligations. And the proposed decision adopts a two-tiered structure for these financial reporting obligations. The first tier applies broadly, and it is sort of a proactive requirement. It obligates CCAs like CEA to submit their most recent audited financial information twice a year, once in January and once in July. This has sort of if it's adopted, has sort of a quirk whereby that could result in sort of duplicate submissions to the extent there aren't new audited financial statements by the time that twice a year checkpoint rolls around. But nonetheless, this is the sort of the tier 1 financial reporting obligation. The tier 2 financial reporting obligations are only triggered if the LSE, the CCA, triggers certain, say, financial warning bells, so to speak. And essentially, if one of those triggers is hit, CCA has 10 days to self-report that to Energy Division, and then it allows Energy Division to consult with the CCA and actually take a look behind the curtain at financial records, at procurement contracts, or things of that sort. And so this is an important change to be aware of. The basic triggers here, they have to do with low cash reserves. So there's this concept of days liquidity on hand, and if that drops below 45 days and the debt service coverage ratio drops below 1, that's a trigger. If there are defaults on procurement contracts, that is a trigger as well under this proposed decision. And I'll pause here to note that this is a proposed decision, and so there are voices out there that want to sort of tailor these and constrain what these triggers might look like. And so we'll see if there are any sort of revisions to these triggers when the final decision comes out.
Before you move on, you're going to
Yes.
move on to the next item, I assume, Are there any questions about Polar? Go ahead.
Thank you for that. I just was curious, in all of the CCAs, has there ever been a time where this mass migration has happened?
My understanding that there was one instance in the past, and you'll excuse me, I haven't lived the CCA world perhaps as long as others in the room, so I don't recall.
Because we're older. Is that what you're saying?
Not at all. More experienced.
There was one up in Hammett, Riverside County.
But regardless, these,
That's it, I believe.
yeah, it just seems like they're just keep piling on when this is not much of a risk factor. And so it becomes hard I feel like they're just making more constraints on CCAs to make them fail when it's just not as high of a risk as they're making these laws and restrictions out to be. But I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Beck.
One question about the audit. Are you saying that on the audited financial information in January, that could be the same one that you send in July? So
That's our understanding of the obligation, Chair Drucker. As best as we can tell, sort of the thinking here might be that certain CCAs operate on, say, a calendar year financial calendar, whereas other CCAs like CEA operate on a fiscal year. And so this twice a year obligation would essentially ensure that the commission catches the most recent documents for the entire community of CCAs.
Yeah, so just to add to that they're kind of all over the place on different fiscal year reporting for different CCAs. We're on a fiscal year in June. There are some that are in fiscal year September, October, and there are even others that are, I think, April. So this is causing some, questions among the CFOs of all these CCAs, as well as their legislative or regulatory council. And that is, we believe, why they're having these two different reporting dates. But it doesn't answer the question why this one agency would have to provide that audited statement, since audited statements typically come out just once a year, unless there's a major change. And just for, I'm sure you realize this, when we refer to Energy Division, that's a division of the PUC. So just wanted to clarify that.
Very good. Are there other questions on this? Go ahead, Eric.
As you said, this is proposed. Are we submitting formal comment on this proposed rule or? Yeah, how are we using our voice in this matter?
At this time, has been the case throughout this or for the most part in this proceeding, Cal CCA is heavily involved, and Cal CCA, we expect, will continue to be involved in addressing this proposed decision.
Very good. Go
I'll-
ahead.
I can jump in a little bit on that too, sorry. I've been an active member of the Cal CCA CFO group for a number of years, and I participated in a couple of calls with them over this last week, and I was asked to send some proposed language this morning, so I sent several proposed changes in the language to clarify, including the audit, the 2 times a year audited statements. So Cal CCA is coordinating comments to address some of the PD. However, they're not in a big way. We're still gonna be subject to a lot of these restrictions, even if we make these comments.
Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you. So shifting gears a little bit here, I want to briefly touch on resource adequacy. The resource adequacy docket is something that's been bubbling and going on for a long time now. And as you may know, there are significant changes afoot, and that is the adoption of this slice of day framework. And essentially, this is a shift from requiring LSEs to procure sort of with an eye toward a month peak to procurement for individual slices, so 24 slices of a day for the CAISO's worst day. And so it's a shift in sort of in how procurement will be measured. It's a shift in how resources might be counted as well. And so there's big changes here. I just am highlighting this today essentially to say stay tuned because a lot of these big questions are yet to be answered. We expect a proposed decision in a couple of months in May of this year with a final decision in June. But I'll flag that there does appear to be at least some pressure building for a delay in this framework. And so we'll see how that shakes out, and we'll be sure to keep you all informed when these important questions get nailed down.
Are there questions about resource adequacy? Okay.
And finally, questions, of course, but a little bonus content that I promised. Yesterday, the commission issued a proposed decision working toward the implementation of demand charges, so fixed charges within the investor-owned utilities retail rates. This is something that was catalyzed by a change in statute. And the idea here is a move sort of away from volumetric rates, so per kilowatt hour rates, to rates that have a fixed charge within them. Again, the proposed decision was just released yesterday, and so there's quite a bit more detail. But the main takeaway is that the proposed decision adopts 3 tiers of fixed charges, and they're income graduated. And so folks that are lower income will have a smaller fixed charge within if they're an IOU retail customer. And then there's a middle band, a middle income band, and then there's sort of all other retail customers will have a larger fixed charge. The commission won't hear this proposed decision until May. So this is sort of just a preview, and sort of we're happy to go into more detail. I'm happy to answer questions if you have them today, but we'll have sort of a better sense of where things are landing with this proposed decision at CEA's next board meeting.
I'm sure we have questions on that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Christopher.
that there's a lot of pushback on that. Actually, Escondido just passed a resolution to support the AB 1999, which would be a pushback to that exact thing, same thing that's being put in the state. AB 205 is be changing the language so that it would only have 2 tiers: one who people would qualify for care and those who don't. So on the Escondido side, that's an absolute no. So just a heads up. I mean, we totally reject that. We actually was a unanimous vote both parties objected to that. So if it comes to a vote in any way or our say, we'll definitely be rejecting that.
Thank you. That's helpful context. I appreciate you mentioning that.
Other questions? Okay. Kalen, are there any public comment on this?
We do not have any speakers on this item.
Very good. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Can we have a legislative status on AB 1999? Like where that bill is and if it looks like it's actually gonna be a thing?
Member Joyce, I'm not prepared to discuss the legislative status of that bill at this time, but happy to let Mr. Wade weigh in if he has an update.
And I can again be corrected if I'm wrong, but last I heard it hadn't made any movement on any of the legislative floors, either the the Assembly or the Senate. So at this point, we don't have any information that it's actively moving.
Thank you.
Are there comments from the board about about this report? Andy, thank you very much for this report.
all.
Appreciate all the information you've given us. Obviously, I think most of the board members and councils and people are very interested in this fixed rate and how that's going to affect rates. So we'll be looking forward to your next report next month.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Very good. Now we go on to item 5, which is the Solar Plus program website portal. So
Thank you, Mayor. Old habits die hard. Chair Drucker and board. So what we'd like to do tonight, or this afternoon rather, is give you a walkthrough of the portal for this program. We reported to you at our last board meeting that this is getting underway, and we also reported that our strategy was to roll it out slowly so that we could work with applicants, walk them through the process, and if you do some analysis of how seamless and customer friendly this process would be. The good news to report is we have 5 applicants that are in the process right now. And before I turn it over to Rob Howard to give an overview of that process, just to remind the board and the community that the Solar Plus program is a solar and battery program that is provided to customers in the CEA territory with no upfront costs, no credit application requirement. And there is the ability to save money on your electricity bill and also to have access to that battery to provide increased efficiency as well as cost savings for the customer. The battery and solar system would be provided by Tesla in this program. We would enter into a power purchase agreement, PPA, with our partner, Participate Energy, so that CEA would be procuring that renewable energy generated by each of these facilities and then providing that back to the customer at a reduced rate as well as access to that battery, or a fixed rate rather, and access to the battery to further help on energy demand needs as well as decreased costs. And then the system itself would be maintained by the Participate Energy and Tesla for the life of the contract. So that is the program, just a high level overview. And Rob Howard, one of our key accounts program managers, is here to walk you through that interface and how an applicant would get through the process, as well as some other updates. Rob.
Thank you, Chair Drucker, Vice Chair Melendez, board members. We want to walk you through actual signing up from the cleanenergyalliance.org website. And if you'll look at from our website under the programs. First of all, I want to apologize. Some of these are smaller to read, but again, you should be able to see them on your screen, but just know we'll walk you through it from the site. We have a programs tab, and from the programs tab, you go right to the Solar Plus link. And when you click on the link, it'll take you to the Solar Plus page. So the page is live. It allows a customer to actually go on the page, and then you'll look at the section to the right, how to enroll. And once you're in that section, you hover over the Enroll Now spot and it will change colors and you click on it and say enroll now and it takes you to the tesla.com website. And you'll see on the tesla.com website, you'll see the term power everything. There's 3 pieces we ask you information that the Tesla site wants you to put in. It's your home address, and just for sample services, we use 1 Civic Center Drive, San Marcos. And we estimated the bill to be $300 a month. Full disclosure, that's about my average electrical cost. And then about 2,000 square foot of roof space. We let everyone know they don't have to get caught up in the exact numbers because we're going to get the actual information and we'll show you how that happens. But this gives you an estimate and how to start the process. You'll be scrolling down on that same page and then you want the solar panels plus the power wall. And the power wall is the actual battery for those who don't know that part of it. And down below, once you selected it, you go to next. And from there, now you're looking at, they'll have a picture, usually a Google map of your home, but then you'll see the Solar Plus program, which is our program, and then you check the box. You'll check the box that says participate in the program. That will cue Tesla to have you enrolled in our Solar Plus program. And then the next piece you're going to be selecting on is you get to choose which combo. It'll make an estimate based on the information you put in, where the system will provide you with powering your most current needs with the solar and the Powerwall battery. You also have options to, if you are expecting more people to be in the house, you're making a projection that you're going to be using more, then the system can be enlarged. And you're scrolling down that same page. You'll also get a chance to select how many batteries. And if you recall, the first Powerwall is $115 a month, and the second one is $75 a month. So you could actually have more Powerwalls, and that you select one Powerwall. And again, scrolling down to the point of you're clicking on order your system. And so that usually takes only a couple of minutes to walk through those pieces. And once you pick the right combo and continue to order, then you'll get a summary of what you've done so far. You've got what your solar rate will be, you've got a Powerwall, and then you're ready, scrolling down, you're reviewing the order to make sure it's what you thought you were getting. And then you enter your account details. So now you're at a point where they're getting name, email address. That email address will be the email that Tesla will be communicating with you throughout the process. Confirming the email address, and then from that point, you're going to actually place your order. Once you place the order, you'll actually receive a confirmation email. I sat with a customer, we walked through it. The actual email came right away. And from that, they want you to set up your account with Tesla. When you set up the account with Tesla, the one thing I will remind people that's really important, they're going to need your utility information. So to have your SDG&E, have an online account, username and password, because it speeds up the process when you have that. So from that point, just to go over, these boxes will help you talk through it. The green are the items that the customers will do. So you order your system, the customers order the system on Tesla.com. The customer uploading the utility bills, that's why you need your username and password. And what will happen is through the Tesla account, they'll ask you for information like, do you have a homeowners association? Because what they're doing is they're looking at everyone that needs to be contacted to continue the process moving forward. They'll actually have you with your username and password. You'll log into your San Diego Gas and Electric electronic account. And with that, they'll be able to pull your bills in order to get you a more precise system design. So that'll be the uploading of the utility bills. Tesla will literally call you and the consultant to finalize the design to ensure that what you said you wanted on site, that's what you're looking for. And then once the system is designed, customers approve that you, as the customer, you'll approve the layout, sign the contract. Tesla will handle preparing and filing the permits with the city. They'll complete the installation. The city comes out, inspects and signs off on it, just like with any other construction project. The utility, the San Diego Gas and Electric is contacted, and they provide permission to operate because we have to make sure that we're connected. And then at that point, you're enjoying your system. So it recognize that you walk through it. It's not difficult, but we wanted you to have a better feel for what that actual process looks like. I'm available for questions or comments from the board.
Other questions for Rob? Rob, what if you don't have a online account and you want to upload your bills by scanning them in or something like that? Is that allowed?
It is allowed, but also recognize we can assist with getting an online account. But you can, Tesla will show you where to upload the bill.
Okay, very good. And how many thousands of people have applied so far?
We're working with about 5 customers right now, but again, we wanted to make sure all the bugs are worked out, and then we'll increase the marketing at that time.
And are those customers obviously, are they located in which areas of the county?
Chair Drucker, I don't remember exactly, but I do know there's San Marcos, Oceanside, 2 Carlsbad, and I'm not sure about.
It's okay. Very good. Are there other questions?
Yes, I do have a couple questions. So what is the average amount of your bill that would make this worthwhile? And I'm assuming like your $300 was just your electricity portion, right? Not the gas. So just the electricity portion, is that?
No, I estimated, Chair Becker, I estimated my total bill.
Oh, okay. So, so does it make sense if that was your total bill, something like that, or would it be a customer that uses more energy? I know what the customer we're targeting, someone who is not able to probably fill out the credit form and maybe couldn't get solar, but I'm just curious, like, does that make sense, or am I not making sense?
I think, Chair Becker, I think I understand your question. It's where is the actual, for lack of a better term, sweet spot for the customer. Our focus has been more on, because again, you're going to go through the design process and you'll get to see what the savings are, and then you make that decision. So for me, it makes sense. So I would say customers that there's no upfront cost. There are customers like the one customer I work with. The reason it was important to him is because he says, I don't want to spend this out-of-pocket money for this system. So this makes sense to me. So I think it's pretty broad.
Okay.
But I will try to get back to you on the actual number if I think I understand your question.
So I want to draw your attention to this slide here. And while it's very small and you can't read it, it does have the projected savings based on your kilowatt usage. Now you're going to have to do a little bit of digging into your own bill. But if you have roughly 377 kilowatt hours per month, you're looking at savings over a 30-year time frame of 12,400. Up to 413 kilowatt hours per month is our typical analysis point for example, our joint rate comparison, $18,000 over 30 years and 439 kilowatt hours, approximately 22,000. And again, what the fee or the tariff rate, the solar rate that we're building into this is about 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So again, if you have the time to go into your bill and take a look at what you typically average in a month and what you're paying per kilowatt hour, you can do a pretty quick analysis yourself if you want to about how much you might save. But this is our general analysis based on our information. One thing I also wanted to point out is that an applicant does not have to start this process simply by starting from our website. So if somebody's interested in solar, they're in our our service territory, and they say they go to Tesla's website, I want to buy a system. When they enter their address and it comes up as our service territory, they will then be made aware that this program exists. So there's that benefit as well. So I just wanted to point that out.
And what if you have a very old Spanish style house that has roof tiles that would crack? Do you
Yeah.
still put solar on those?
I would say unlikely. So one of the parts of this process, once you go through the application, is there is a site assessment. And Rob can tell you exactly when that happens, but there is a site assessment to determine whether or not your roof is in the type of condition that can accept the facility. And I think Mr. Howard might have firsthand knowledge of that very question.
And then also, oh, that wasn't your house on here that was on here?
Oh, no, that wasn't my house, but
And my other question was, so your option is not the solar roof one from Tesla? They won't just come put a new roof on my house and do it that way?
That's not part of our program.
Oh, darn it.
What I will say is that coming soon, and this has been something that has come up in discussion about this program, is a battery-only option. Because we do recognize that there are a lot of net energy metering customers out there
Already have
already
solar and would
who
love to have a
got it
battery.
before the battery was, really a hot commodity, if you will. They're not cheap. And so we are going to be adding to this program with a battery only option.
It's a great idea. Thank you for that presentation.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yes, thank you. Would you mind scrolling ahead one or two slides from where you are now? Maybe one more. There we go. Well, anyway, it showed a fee, a monthly fee. Can you explain that? You'll find it on one of these slides as we move along. It's actually on several of the slides.
115.
Well, our program is there, keep in mind, this is no upfront cost, but there is an amortized cost of the battery over time. So it's $115 per month, if that's the fee you're talking about.
Okay.
And so that would be on your bill. The energy then, the solar rate would be fixed, but that is the payment of the battery. And then if a customer is allowed to have more than one battery, that the second battery would be an additional $75 per month.
And so that fee, how many years is that factored out to?
Chair Musgrove, the contracts for the program is a 25-year agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, well, any public comment, Kaylin?
No, we do not have any public comment.
Well, really appreciate, Rob, you coming forward and presenting this. This is obviously a very exciting program. And look forward to the time when we can advertise this more generally after we get all the bugs fixed, I hope.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are coming to conclusion here. Are there any board member requests for future agenda items? Go ahead.
Last year, we discussed a thermal plant and a contract. I think it was out in Nevada in the desert. I'd like to an update on that, the status of that contract, where we are and forecasting out any hopeful completion dates. A geothermal plant.
The geothermal, yeah.
Yes, we do have an update on that. And Dan, if you want to step forward and give that, we did recently get an update from our supplier, and I think Dan.
Just so you know, Dan and I did not conspire on this issue.
Thank you for the question. So this is I believe the project you're referring to is our long-term PPA with the Cape Station geothermal project. So that project, the scheduled operation date for it is mid-2026. We get quarterly updates on construction progress as part of our contract and that we recently received. As of now, everything's still proceeding on schedule. We're looking
you.
forward to that being online.
As are we.
Very good. Are there any other board member requests for future agenda items? Okay, our next meeting is going to be on Thursday, April 24th, 2024 in this building again. And with that, we are adjourned.